Hi guys, at the beginning of Trump's presidency, he told countries around the world that he would impose tariffs on their exports to the US. All sorts of numbers were thrown around, 25%, 100%, even 200% tariffs were mentioned. Then they came into force and Trump issued a number of U-turns, following pressure from within his own administration or by simply looking at the bond market. Well, one thing that was consistent during this saga, that other countries would pay the tariff. That of course is wrong. Now that reality has bitten and American companies are getting more and more hit by the import tax, Trump is suggesting that they absorb the cost, which is both unfair and frankly crazy.
They're able to do this.
When you say that Walmart should eat the cost of the tariffs, is that an acknowledgement that it is U.S. companies that bear the brunt of tariffs, not foreign countries?
Sometimes the country will eat it. Sometimes Walmart will eat it. And
No. That's not the case. It's not the case that sometimes the other country that has the tariff imposed upon them will eat the tariff or absorb the cost, and sometimes it's the business. No, it's the importing business or consumer or whoever's importing that will eat the tariff. So Trump started out by saying that other countries pay the tariff, and people within his administration repeated that line, which was obviously false. But now it's 50-50. China will pay a bit, the European Union will pay a bit, and Walmart, for example, the huge supermarket chain in the US, they'll take a hit as well. So we've gone from only the other country will pay it to now it's 50-50, which is of course completely wrong. It's whoever's importing that they'll have to pay the tariff.
sometimes there'll be something to pay, something extra. I've always been a fan, and I've always believed. And if you look, take a look at what I did 4 years ago. We had the greatest economy, and we had no inflation. Remember that. We had no inflation.
Okay. You didn't have no inflation. You had low inflation. He doesn't know the difference between low and no. Inflation was hovering around 2%. It was at 1.9, and then it went up to 2.3. But let's say it was around 2%. It was low. But the tariffs that Trump is talking about were limited. He didn't have tariffs on all countries around the world. He didn't impose this massive tariff regime on countries all over the world. And it wasn't on pretty much all products, which he's doing now. It's a completely different situation. So companies could absorb some of the cost. They had to absorb some of the cost if they wanted to sell their products. But now it's gone beyond insane.
And yet we had hundreds of billions of dollars of tariffs that I put on China, yet we had no inflation, we had no big cost differential. Oftentimes, and I don't like it when a department store, because they'll do a lot of business, but they announce record profits and everything else. They have to take out some of their profits. They'll make
They made massive profits last year before the tariffs. Now you're imposing a massive tariff on them, and of course it's going to harm their profits. But we're talking about huge supermarket chains that operate on very thin margins. They operate on massive quantity. So they sell at a very small margin, but a huge quantity of stuff. So if you increase the tariff by even a few percent, you're going to reduce their margin or eliminate their margin. But if you're putting a tariff of 50% or 20% or 100%, they won't be able to sell those products and make a profit. They'll end up not selling them or having to pass that cost on to the consumer. And then the consumer will say, well, I can't afford this product because it's too expensive now. Like, the whole point of a tariff is to drive up the cost of imported goods, with the goal, of course, of increasing manufacturing in the US. But Trump doesn't have a policy for that. He doesn't have an economic plan to help manufacturing in the US. It's just, let's punish importers. Let's drive up the cost of imported goods and then hope that manufacturing will come back to the US. It doesn't work like that. All he's doing is making it more difficult for companies to sell their products and consumers to pay more.
A little bit less money, but I don't want the consumer. I don't want the consumer to pay.
You don't want the consumer to pay, so you want the business to go out of business. Because if they're operating on a very small margin, they're going to have to pass that cost on to the consumer and hope that the consumer will pay it. Because if the consumer doesn't, then obviously the business will close down. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.